back here. Okay, we'll put our arms out. Now, as we rotate or as we step our right foot forward, rotate your right arm. Good. Now step to your left foot, rotate your left. Good. And then basically get it going. Yep. Perfect. So this is something I use every morning as part of my warm-up.
Now, you're doing this standing up. How come you wouldn't sort of do this in your golf posture?
You could. It's just I'm doing it with the walk. Yeah. So I like everything I do is based heavily around the gait patterns.
How come?
Because I think there's a strong correlation to how the spirals of the body are moving. So, you know, when you look at the functionality of your body, there's the gait cycle. There's a lot of rotational movement. There's a lot of contralateral movement, and what I mean by that is, for example, when my right leg's forward, my right arm is swinging back, and my left arm is swinging forward. Okay, so contralateral being it's moving in opposite directions. That's very similar to what's happening in a golf swing. Okay, so as we go to the top, right, and we start to change direction, the right shoulder might be loading back as the left shoulder is moving across, creating a huge stretch through the core. So that being said, when you start to understand the patterns of gait, you start to understand how it relates to your actual golf swing. You know, and you see that kind of coming about in the world of fitness. I know we're going to talk about some of that stuff today, but there's a lot of great practitioners now that their practice has evolved around understanding how to improve people's gait cycle in an effort to improve their golf swing.
Absolutely, and also the standing posture, how someone stands.
Yeah, being able, you know, and that's where it starts, right? I mean, ultimately, we have to get to the correct standing static posture first, right? From there, if we can't even achieve a good posture here, how are we supposed to move and have good posture?
Exactly. So let's talk about posture for a second, so people can actually take a look in the mirror and see what's going on. So here I'm standing. I'm going to turn sideways so they can see. Am I in trouble?
So, but you can see a lot of curve through your lumbar spine. So what I would do is I'd feel like you're pulling the zone from your belly button down to your, if you had a belt buckle on, okay, in between there, I'd feel like you're pulling that back, almost like you're sucking your belly in with a slight tensioning through there. And what that should do is it should actually neutralize the pelvis, and it should start to flatten out the part of your spine from the bottom of your, it should start to flatten out your lumbar spine. So that right where your bottom, the bottom of your thoracic spine meets your lumbar spine, from there down to your tailbone, it should neutralize that. That's really important because a lot of people who have back pain typically don't know how to control that, and when you have that too extended in the swing, it's painful. So
so we call that S posture.
S posture, correct.
And you don't want to swing in S posture ever. One, because it shuts off your core.
Exactly.
And it puts a lot of pressure on your lower back. So when I set up to my golf swing, this may feel athletic, but it's not. So you got to really tuck and swing in neutral, which is what Josh I think is saying.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, a lot of times when we look at that, right? So let's say we take a player who is in S posture, and it's like, okay, if I tell them to just tilt their pelvis under them, right? You have the control to be able to do that, but does that feel like that's going to stay there? Does it feel like that just the move of tilting your pelvis is going to stick? Probably not. If I tell you to tilt it under and then engage your core, right, now that kind of locks this all in and allows us to move from that new position. So everything I do when I get into my setup, the first thing I'm always doing is I'm trying to get my core engaged to be able to neutralize my pelvis. And also the other thing it does is, right, we talk about this core engagement concept, right, or moving our trunk and our obliques. I'm going to give you a question. So put your arms at your side. Now, can you feel your bicep, your left bicep in space?
No.
Probably not, right? But now if you flex your left bicep, so go ahead and show them your guns, right? Now, can you actually feel where this is in space? Kinda, okay. So anytime you contract something.
I feel this one more.
Okay, yeah. So, but the point is, once you create some muscle tension through there, you have more awareness of where it is relative to your body. So, if we set up and we get some awareness of that core, of our core at address, now it gives us a better awareness of where we're actually moving from.
Oh, that makes sense. I believe, as you believe, and we're going to dive into this, that the golf swing is driven by the core and the obliques.
Right.
because the obliques help us be rotational.
Exactly.
And you'll dive into that because you're super expert in that.
Sure. I'm by no means an expert.
Yeah, so that's good. So we have to recap here. We've got the ball.
Yeah.
That folks can use to.
Right, and I'd say that's very baseline. You know, if you feel like you're not a great rotator, you don't have great awareness of your trunk and how it's rotating, start with that. Do it in a mirror. Throw something down on the ground that gives you a reference point of where you're trying to turn to. You could also, within that drill we did, adjust the stick. So you can, instead of setting up with it under the middle, you can move it more to the right foot. And then as you roll that ball back, then you're kind of forcing it to get to a further point in your backswing.
That makes it, I'm going to bring this ball again. Because how much, Christina, should I rotate in the backswing?
All right. You want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
I'd say as much rotation as you can, generally speaking.
So what effect though? What?
So yeah, I mean you want to make sure that there's connectivity through your core, right? We want to make sure our core is engaged as we're turning. You know, I think that when you look at rotation, I think rotation could come from different spots, right? You could actually turn your pelvis. You could turn more of your upper body, your chest, and your shoulders. So, you know, and it depends on the demographic of player, in my opinion. If you're someone who is very limited or restricted, you're most likely going to need to be able to get the pelvis rotating, right? Especially the older demographic of player who's not going to have the rotation in their spine that they did when they were younger. You know, that's where we could really utilize the pelvis to get more range of motion in our swing. Now, if you're a younger player and you're really flexible, you know, could it possibly hurt if they over rotate their pelvis too fast? Sure.
Yeah.
And that's where understanding how to segment it correctly and get the right sequence of the rotation becomes more important there. But does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. My thought with that is, and I see this with my campers, you know, the golf swing is, what, 2 seconds? Mm-hmm. They tend to over-rotate their pelvis a lot. Mm-hmm. And they don't have enough time to get it back into position, so they end up getting kind of roadblocked in the downswing. Mm-hmm. So I'm a fan of allowing that hip to rotate, but I don't like to see them over-rotate.
I agree.
Thought on that?
I agree. I think that's really important. Sure, and I think like at first I think it would be good if they can identify how much movement they have in their spine. So if they are someone who has a lot of rotation where they can actually rotate their upper body and segment it well, then they need less of it. If you're someone who can't even move to your right, then obviously you're going to need more pelvic rotation.
Yep.
So go ahead and set up. We'll use you for an example. So you're fit. You look decently mobile, to my knowledge.
Decent.
Like so
back's kind of tight.
In a perfect world, okay, as the backswing progresses, okay, when you go from address to waist high, okay, very good. Now, and we'll actually go back a little bit further. So this is kind of the checkpoint where once she's here, I don't like to see much space in the legs from the down line view. So if I'm videoing from down this angle and I start to see some space between her legs, that's a sign that the rotation is happening too early. Yeah,
oh, this space?
Exactly, yeah. So if you got that pelvis turned more, I'd be able to see through your legs from the down the line view.
Bad.
Exactly. So if it happens too early, it could potentially be bad.
Oh, I got you. I'm going to do it. Ready?
Yep, exactly. Exactly. So there's too much space. Now, go back to waist high and perfect. Now, what I'm looking at from the down the line view is I can see your left leg, I can see the right leg, but I'm not seeing any space in between those legs. Now, as you keep turning to the top, right, now that trail leg is going to go into extension a little bit, that trail hip's going to get pulled around. Now, I can actually start to see through those legs. So, yes, because we still need rotation, right? We don't want to block it off completely. Ultimately, right. If we don't rotate, we can't produce any power or speed. But for a better player, the sequencing of it becomes more important. As the demographic gets older, they can get away with a little bit more hip rotation versus upper body rotation.
All right, so someone that maybe is limited in mobility.
Right, right.
They can get their hips rotating earlier. Is that what
they could? They could get them earlier. Yeah, that's one of the things. A little bit earlier.
Maybe bend this, get this knee moving into the back one? Do you think that would help?
Yeah, I mean, and we could even use the stick on the ground, you know, you could kind of see, go back to address, right? So you could kind of see as she winds up and she turns her trunk, this lead leg is actually starting to move back over this middle stick. So that's a great way to tell if your body is actually turning, okay? So if she kept this leg kind of out this way like this, I mean, immediately you felt a restriction in there. So by letting that leg kind of get pulled back behind that stick is a great way to free the body up. And once again, I think like the cueing of that is so independent to the individual. Right. So if you're a player who has too much rotation, you're probably going to need to feel a little bit more stability. Agree? But if you're a player who has historically kind of blocked your pelvis off, right, you're going to probably need to feel a lot more rotation. And then as you get better at doing your respective drill, then you could sequence it out and get really into the details of the order it's moving through. If that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Get it down and around and at least into the back foot quadrant. Because I just see a lot of players, and I'm not talking about the elite players who can have that great extension at the top and stay super centered. I'm talking about the ones, the everyday player. Get this lead shoulder in the back foot quadrant versus here. Because when they tend to keep it on the front side, they get the reverse spine, they get their spine angle.
So when you say quadrant, can you define that for me? Because I'm not sure what you mean.
Front quadrant.
Okay.
Over the front foot. Back quadrant over the back foot.
Got it, okay. Yeah, so you're...
I see a lot of players trying to stay super centered and their spine angle gets like this. It's dangerous in my opinion.
So you're trying to get this working back, down and around. I like that a lot. I think that's a great kind of visual. And I remember at various points in my development using that left shoulder as kind of the awareness of where it needed to go in the backswing.
Yeah, because our goal as coaches is to let players be their best coach.
It is. Right? It is. There's an abundance of information. The guests at home are with themselves 24/7, so they're going to be able to take that information and apply it to themselves the most logical way possible. So using some of these different cues and ideas to ultimately help you guys on your own journey is what it's all about at the end of the day.
That's right. At the end of the day, it's all about more powers and hitting bombs.
More powers and more power. No, I'm just kidding.
No, for sure. No, I'm all about power. Raise your hand if you want more power. Raise your hand.
All right.
He's already got the power.
I already got it.
All right, guys.
I'll take a little bit more, though.
You can always use a little more. If you have any questions about this, leave a comment, and we'll be sure to answer future tips.